Kaleidescape has ruined movie collecting for me. 4K UHD disc collections for me, and I'm going to tell you guys why. First of all, this is not anything to try to get you guys to get a Kaleidescape. I do not have any affiliation with Kaleidescape. I do not, I don't have any, links, for a deal or anything in my subscription, or anything like that with Kaleidescape. I'm telling you my true feelings about this unit. So I started out, kind of just like getting a home theater system. I went from a Yamaha A2A to a Denon 940, then a Denon or a Denon 3800H. Then I moved to a Marantz Cinema 50 because I just didn't feel like the Denon was doing it for me. It was too bright. Cinema 50, I kind of outgrew that. I went ahead and got an Anthem 1140 receiver, and it did like 140 watts per channel. And I still have that one. It does pretty good. And then I moved up into separates, and I got an Anthem AVM90, which is the top of the line Anthem processor to process sound. I've got like a 7 layer bed layer of speakers. So I've got the rear speakers, I've got the side speakers, I got the front LCR speakers, I've got like the 4 Atmos speakers. I'm running 2 subwoofers. I got 2 different theaters. I got one is a small theater, which I'm going to end up showing on here eventually, and then I've got my main theater in the house, right? And so I like sound, moving all around me. I love Atmos. I love the spatial cues of Atmos. Like when something's supposed to be here, it's right here. If something's supposed to be here, it's right there, moving accordingly. I love that. Like watching Dune, like I love just how aware like the engineers were who mixed the sound of that movie. And there's other movies, Spider-Man and different movies like that they do a really good job of mixing the audio. Now I got the processor. I'm like, okay, let me just upgrade my TV. Do I want a projector? I didn't feel like a projector really was worth it for me in my scenario. Some people like projectors. I didn't think it was worth it because of the price to comparison, right? So I really fell in love with the LG G4 television. And, it's an OLED, just insane picture quality. Like, I've never seen anything like it before, right? So when I went to Audio Advice Live in 2024, I seen projectors that were nice, that were somewhat comparable to the OLED, but it's like $18,000. Whereas the OLED TV, LG G4, it's like a couple $1,000s. So it's a no-brainer, get the LG G4, right? So I ended up getting 2 LG G4 televisions instead of the projector, because then when you get a projector, you may have to look into, maybe getting a Mad VR, and then the cost, Mad VR is like $5,000, $6,000. So like the cost just keeps going up when you get to projectors, you know what I mean? And it's just like, if I'm not gonna get the same quality as this TV, I'm not paying an astronomical amount of money for a projector. It's not gonna happen. Or you can get an Epson projector. Those are decent, but it doesn't look anywhere near as good as the LG G4, so I opted for the LG G4. Now, with having that television, I'm like, okay, well, how do I get the best picture quality out of it? I was running an Apple TV like everybody else, and I'm like, it's good, but it's something missing, and I went back to the store. I'm like, why did it look so different in the store than at home? And they're like, well, we're running a 4K disc. So then I got into 4K, right? I started buying movies in 4K. I bought a UB820. I've got 2 Panasonic UB820s, one's for each room. And so, I started to see, oh, wow, like this TV is really insane. So from there, I stopped really watching streaming because I could see clearly that it's a big drop off and fidelity, and then also sound, right? Because when you got a 4K UHD disc, the sound is going to be lossless, so less compressed, right? And so I fell in love with that aspect. Having, a processor of this caliber, Anthem processor, being able to process the sound and, give me the full quality of sound was just a night and day experience from listening to a movie and streaming versus watching a movie on a 4K UHD disc, right? And so I went down the rabbit hole of collecting 4K DVDs. I started to subscribe to different channels, YouTubers that collected 4K UHDs. And, people would get into the steelbook, the collecting, and, it's content mining. People got to keep content going. Some people just like collecting steelbooks, things like that. And I started to see something. one thing I started to see is that there became more scarcity. For one, it's the manufacturers, they don't want to put out as much product because they want to keep the price high. Maybe put out like a few hundred, a few thousand, discs or whatever, let everybody fight for them, whatever. They don't have to deal with too much distribution and they can get a decent amount of money in return back. But then you get like the reviewers who will talk about these movies and create more scarcity. Right. And they're not doing it purposely. They're excited about collecting 4K UHDs and steelbooks and all of that. But they have amassed big followings. Some of these guys have like 100. One of these guys have 100 and some thousand subscribers. On my other channel, I've got 130,000 subscribers. Right. So I understand like the impact different channels can have, with the masses, so when they would, when the guy would drop a video, there would immediately be a rush for everybody to buy the disc, when it's released, because oftentimes he would get the disc, way before everybody else. The studio would give him a version of review. He had like an embargo to where he couldn't say anything about it until close to disc, release. And then he would talk about it and people would clamor and they would get it, right? And then you had this situation where bots will come in and they will buy up everything, and then people will resell some of these movies like Kingdom of Heaven, right? And they would just buy up everything and then try to resell it on eBay. So now you're paying like $80 or something like that for a steelbook. So oftentimes that would start happening. Arrow Video, which is like a boutique label, they would have similar issues to where people would, bolster up the release of a remastered video, and then when they actually release it, nobody can get it, so and Arrow Video is kind of like a weird line, because a lot of their 4K remasters to me are not really that good. They have partnerships with some of these big YouTube channels, so they push them anyway, but it's cool that they keep the disc collecting going and people continuing to buy it or whatever. Like, there's nothing bad about that, but it's not gonna look as good a lot of times as like a major, like a Universal or a Sony release of a disc, and I noticed that like right off the bat, so that wasn't too big of a problem. But sometimes you still want the disc. Like I had Jennifer Lopez The Sale movie. It was like tough to get it, and then I had to get it secondhand. It was still new, but it was secondhand, and I did not like having to do that, so that became an issue. So I'm like, what is the best thing, right? I hear people talk about Doom players. I hear people talk about Zaidu players. And with those, you can like obviously collect. If you have the disc, you can burn the movie onto the drive, and then you can have the Zaidu player, your Doom player, whatever, run it. And then you don't have to deal with getting the disc out. All of that can just be handled through the screen or through the unit, right? And I thought that was a cool thing, but then you got to sit down and you got to burn the disc. You got to have time for it. Then you still got to get the disc. So I'm like, what is the best thing? What would sound better than a 4K UHD and look better than a 4K UHD? I spent all this money, which is not a ton of money, right? But I spent all this money on a 4K OLED TV, right? My LG G4, top of the line, what is going to make it look the best? And I looked into Kaleidescape, right? So with Kaleidescape, you're able to, and this is not selling you guys or anything, I'm just telling you what it is, right? So a Kaleidescape, you could basically, as soon as a movie is released, right? When the studios release the Apple TV or wherever, and it's released, you can download the Rumex, whatever it is, that Kaleidescape uses, the Rumex file or whatever. They tweak it and then put it on their store, right? So it's going to be the 4K quality. It's like having a 4K disc, but a little bit better oftentimes, right? Because you're going to have a little bit more data on the movie. So like when I downloaded Kingdom of Heaven, because people couldn't find it, I could just download it on Kaleidescape, right? You download Kingdom of Heaven, it's going to have, like, I think it's like 20 more gigs of data. Like I think it may even be more than that, but like I think like 20 more gigs of data like available, 15 or 20 more gigs of data on the Kaleidescape. So what that means is there's more fidelity like in the picture. Sometimes like a movie can have more data, but it doesn't really translate to what you see on the screen. They got more data, right? But sometimes it can mean like the picture may be clearer. than the 4K UHD disc, right? Because they don't have to add the features. They don't have, you know what I mean? The behind the scenes, all of that stuff that goes onto a disc, because a disc is only so big. You know, some people use 66 gig discs like Disney. Some people use, 100 gig discs, and they put their movies on there. But you have to be able to fit everything on there. So like with the Dune movie, you're gonna have the special features, behind the scenes, all of that is gonna be on the disc, and you're gonna have the movies. So they have to reduce space, right? So like a Dune movie on the Kaleidescape is going to have more space, you know what I mean, for the particular, or more data for the particular movie, right? So you might get 74 gigs for the movie on the disc, but on the Kaleidescape you're getting like 89, 90, you know what I mean, gigs on the movie itself. So you're gonna have more data, so that could translate to better visuals, right? So maybe the Dolby Vision may look a little bit better, you know what I mean, or just the facial features, because I see it when I A/B test some of these movies. I can see like their face on a close-up. You see more, things going on their face. They might have age marks or age spots or wrinkles and things like that. You can see a little bit more on the Kaleidescape than the disc, and the sound may be a little bit better, right? Sometimes it's about the same as the 4K UHD disc, the sound on the Kaleidescape, but sometimes it is better. There may be some tracks within the mastering that they may have removed from the room X, however they do it, in the movie, to compress it, to get it to fit on the disc. Like Brightburn, I always talk about that movie, to where Brandon at the end of the movie screaming, running, flying through the house. None of the screaming is on the disc, right? But it's all on the Kaleidescape. Things like that, like you can get if a movie has a little bit more data. And sometimes a movie may have the same amount of data, but it's still, for some reason, I don't know why, may look a little bit better on the Kaleidescape. And sometimes it's very, sometimes it may not look better, right? It may just be the same, but with the Kaleidescape, you're able to get access to that movie months ahead of time in a 4K full quality. Like Ballerina, for instance, like that's one of the movies that I mentioned, or there was a war movie, that came out through, I think, A24. They had a movie that came out. It was a war movie that came out recently. I had it, I think, about like 2 months before it released on disc, and everybody's waiting for this disc release and talking about it and getting everybody excited, doing the preview videos of what's coming out, and then like it's already out, like on the Kaleidescape. So stuff like that has kind of ruined disc collections for me, because it's like I'm impatient. I don't want to wait 2 or 3 months to get a disc, and then like when you get the disc, you have to hope it's not damaged, and I'm a very, finicky buyer, right? I want stuff and I want it to be perfect because I spent my money. Oftentimes when you get something through Amazon, the package is damaged. They got tons of stuff they're loading onto the trucks, and a lot of times they just throw in the package at the door, so the box could be dented, and or the disc could be scratched inside because the disc is moving around, on the clipper, and it's scratch the disc. Things like that can happen, or there could be delays in shipping, so, and that's happened before, to where I may have bought a movie through Arrow, or a movie through, no, not Arrow, but Grub, and there's a delay in shipping, so, and I'm expecting the movie at a certain time, and then I may get it later. So it like things like that kind of made me kind of get away from the whole collecting thing. And then it's like you have to find somewhere to store it. If you have a ton of space, by all means, it's good to have the disc just in case anything happens, your internet goes out or whatever, and you can, it's always good to have the disc. I'll never tell anybody not to get a disc, right? But to me, when I see the scarcity going on right now and the high price inflations, like Tombstone, right? In order to get Tombstone, Steelbook, whatever, you got to pay like $50 something now to get that movie. I got it on the Kaleidescape for $19, $19.99. And it's, I think, better quality than the disc. And it was $19. So I end up saving like about $30. And I can, like, another thing about the Kaleidescape, right? that I like about it, right? I'm gonna tell you some things I don't like about it. One thing I like about it, I've got a Strato V, so it holds about 9 or 10 movies, right? So, and you know, you can buy a tier server. That's like super expensive. I would never recommend somebody doing that because the price is just way too high, right? But you can, like, after you finish a movie, you can delete it and download another movie or whatever. That causes issues because you're using a lot of data doing it. And I'm just being real with that. But once you have like a bunch of movies on there, for me to get out of a movie and go into another movie, it takes about 5 seconds. Not 5 minutes or 2 minutes or you know, because you got to get up. You got to take the disc out of the UB820 or UB9000, Oppo 203, 205, whatever you got. You know, then you got to put the disc back. Then you got to get another disc, and you got to put the disc in, and then you got to turn it on. Now you got to wait for the Paramount Studios logo and all the previews and all of that. And you don't have any previews or really logos in the Kaleidescape. You might have one, like right before the movie starts. That's it. You don't have to sit there and then go to the navigation screen and all, like none of that. You don't have to do any of that. It just starts immediately. So switching between movies can take about 5 seconds, right? And so I can get the movie faster because I've had like people come over and watch Ballerina, like, yo, you already got it? Like, yeah, I got it. And I could just like, you know, go, if I want to show off different scenes from different movies, I can write a script and have people come over and just watch the script real quick with the 10 movies that I have on there if I have them laid out for them. You know, I don't have to keep switching discs to demo things, you know, or I could just go to the movie and then go to scenes and pick a scene and run it that way. And that may take maybe 7 seconds, you know, versus, you know, you got to think, let's just say I got 10 discs I want to demo to somebody. That just switching the discs in and out, you know, and then waiting for things to start. That could be like, for all of those discs, like 30 minutes when you add everything up. With the Kaleidescape, it's like this, right? And then the quality is going to be better than the disc. So that's the interesting thing for me with Kaleidescape. So it became an issue to where when a movie is going to be released, and I would see people do the videos, getting excited about the movie releases and stuff like that. And, you know, with the release dates, I would have the movies like 2 months ahead of time, a lot of them, you know, so it made me just get kind of away from this collection because it's like, one, some of these movies that you're going to have to pre-order, you try to pre-order, you can't, like they're already sold out because these people with these channels are pushing the product, right? So everybody sees it, tens of thousands of people. These are not numbers, just numbers, these are people, right? So they're seeing all of this and they're reacting to it and they're buying everything up. And so sometimes you know, an only way to get it is to get it through a scalper, right? That's going to be having it on eBay, or maybe they'll try to resell it on Amazon and you're paying more money, you know? So that created an issue for me. The one great thing about this collection is that there are some movies that Kaleidescape doesn't have, right? So the Criterion collection is not on Kaleidescape. I don't really like a lot of the Criterion collection. I think I got one movie from the Criterion collection, which is Roma, and that's purely for the sound. Other than that, I don't really collect Criterion collection. Arrow Video is not on the Kaleidescape. But what I said earlier is I don't think Arrow Video is really that great of quality. Like in movies, you know, I think the gamma is too hot. You know, if you have a really good display, it's going to show that. You know, it's too hot, you know, and the audio sometimes is maybe too loud. They may have just boosted it up a lot, you know, and it doesn't sound as clean as like a studio release. So am I really concerned about that not being on Kaleidescape? No, because I could just buy that disc if I want to collect that disc, because more than likely that's just a collectible anyway, right? So it all depends on what you want. Like Godzilla -1, I've got the disc. That's not on Kaleidescape. You know, but for the most part, a lot of things that have not made it to disc that have 4K remasters are not on disc. You know what I'm saying? Or have made it to Kaleidescape that have 4K masters are not on disc. So you're going to have access to way more 4K movies than you will if you're just running like a UB820 or a 4K Blu-ray player. You know, so that comes into play. Now, pricing. I feel like overall movie collecting is more expensive with discs Renting movies are going to be more expensive on a Kaleidescape than an Apple TV. But if you're collecting discs, you're going to have to pay more, right? With the Kaleidescape, they run sales. So, you might, a disc that you might have to pay $24 for or $29 for, you may be able to get on a Kaleidescape when they run a sale for $14.99, or maybe $21 or maybe $20. And oftentimes, $20 or $18.99 or $17.99, you might be able to get the movie on a Kaleidescape, which is better quality for cheaper. So stuff like that has made me kind of get away from the collecting aspect. Every once in a while, I do watch the people's previews on their YouTube channels and stuff, because, it's cool that people share some of your hobbies, right? And then I get to see what they're going to be collecting, and I could just go on Kaleidescape and just download it immediately a lot of times, while they have to wait like months to get it. Like, I can just download it and watch it. And if I did get into doing reviews, I would be able to do a review months ahead of time before they would even be able to get it. So that's an awesome thing, but would I recommend a Kaleidescape to somebody? No, right? Unless you have the money, you already have your theater set up, you've got your room treatment done, you've got the proper subwoofers that you want and everything that you like and you love, whether or not you're going to love your projector or TV, you got everything you want. Kaleidescape should be the last thing. The reason why I would not recommend the Kaleidescape, even though I love it for different reasons, is because of the UI, right? It's two reasons. The UI on the Kaleidescape is in 1080p on a Strato V, and I believe the Strato E. So the Strato V is like $4,400, and it only holds 10 movies at a time. And oftentimes movies are in Dolby Vision, so it's more data, right? So it's probably like 9 and 10 movies, right? The Strato E holds about 5 movies, but movies are oftentimes in Dolby Vision, bigger file sizes, so probably 4 to 5 movies, right? The reason why I would not recommend this is because in order to get access to all of your movies at once, you have to buy a Terra server, and it is way too expensive. A Terra server for a Kaleidescape can run you six to like $9,000. And we're talking about 12 terabytes. And if you buy one of these Strato units, the storage that you have inside of the unit, which I think I have like a terabyte, right? That holds like 10 movies, 9 to 10 movies. It's not in addition to the 12 terabyte Terra server that you buy. You just lose that. They haven't figured out a way to like let you keep that and the Terra server space. So it's really like a ripoff, like when you get the Terra server, because it's like now you have the space on the Kaleidescape unit, the 10 terabytes that you can't use, and you have a Terra server. And so you're actually like doing yourself somewhat of a disservice in a weird way. When some people can say, oh, well, you can just take 10 movies and move it around through your house, maybe watch it on different TVs or whatever, and you would have the dedicated storage on the unit. Some people think that's cool. Like, I feel like if I'm paying $4,400 for a device or $4,000 for a device, I want at least not to feel like I'm getting already, price gouged. I want to feel like I'm not super getting price gouged, right? So the Terra server is way too expensive. What it does is it gives you access to a wall and you can see all of your movies. Movies are massive on the Kaleidescape. So even though you got 12 terabyte of a Terra server, it's going to fill up quick. You know what I mean? And so then you start looking at bigger Terra servers and stuff like that. I don't even have a Terra server because I don't feel like it's worth the price of admission on the Terra server. 12 terabytes for like $6,000-$7,000 is insane. And then you can buy like a 8 terabyte server, but it won't work with the Strato units because they configure the Strato units to where you can't buy the cheaper storage devices. And because they want more money from you is what it is. They also, I believe, cap the download speeds of the Kaleidescape to where, like, they say you can download a movie in 10 minutes. I've never been able to download a movie in 10 minutes. Oftentimes, maybe 15 minutes. or depending on the size of the movie, or if you download a box collection or something, it take like 20-30 minutes or something like that. You know what I mean? But oftentimes about 15 minutes. Very rarely I'm getting 10 minutes on a movie. If it's an HD version, 10 minutes, cool. But the price of the storage is insane. It's not even, you can't even justify it, and they'll say, oh, well, it's not the customer we're looking for. They're looking for a customer and they can just take all their money. That's what the Kaleidescape is for, in my opinion, right? So that's one reason why I would never recommend this to somebody. Number two, the UI on the Kaleidescape is 1080p, right? So that's like what you look at when you're navigating, and navigation menus and all of that is 1080p. On a $4,400 Kaleidescape Strato V, 1080p. They didn't even think to update that to 4K. In order to get the 4K version of the UI, you got to buy a Strato C, which doesn't have Dolby Vision. And the whole purpose of me getting the Strato V was for Dolby Vision. So you get the Dolby Vision with the Strato V, but you don't get a 4K UI, which is insane. That's insanity to me. Right? The movie's going to play in 4K, best quality, right? Allegedly. But you're going to have an issue to where the UI, it doesn't look as good, right? And if you have a projector, and I've seen the Strato V on a projector, it doesn't look good. The UI. The movie looks good, but the UI does not look good. And you're going to get people in the comments, oh, well, the UI is not that big of a deal. They're dealers. You got these dealers, they get in the comment sections, and they make excuses because obviously they have like some sort of deal with Kaleidescape, or maybe they sell the units, or maybe they can get a kickback in some way, movie credits if they can get somebody to use their code or something. But I don't feel like a 1080p UI in 2025 is acceptable. Right? I like that it's fast. It's very convenient. The interface is slick, but the 1080p UI is a negative, a major negative that people are not talking about. And I have to get loud by saying that because for some reason they don't get it. Yes, it's cool. The Kaleidescape is amazing, but that 1080p is a major negative, where you got a Dune player and a Zaidu is going to give you better quality, UI, so I think my friend, he's got a Zaidu player. He said, yo, this is 4K UI. And you can see the difference between this and the Strato V UI when you're navigating. So I don't like the 1080p UI at all. It's not acceptable. None of these dealers and none of these influencers can tell me that it's acceptable. It is not. But the unit as a whole, is it worth it? For my use case scenario, when a movie is first released, I get to rent it for $19.99 when it's first released, right? Which oftentimes is going to be a little bit more than Apple TV renting movies, because sometimes I've seen a rental for a movie be like $29, something insane, but you can rent it in full quality. So a lot of movies that I rent, $19, you know what I mean? Got the family, everybody's chilling. We could watch it in my theater and, with my sound, something that I'm satisfied with, and I can watch it before it hits disc, So I feel like, to me, the Kaleidescape has ruined 4K movie collecting for me, because I can just get it so fast, the movie, and the quality is often better. So it's like, am I going to pay more money for a movie that I have to sit through the logos, I have to go to the navigation screen, and I gotta go, and sometimes I gotta choose like what audio format, because like some of them may default to DTSX, and I gotta go back to the title screen, gotta go to audio, and then I gotta fix that, or if the subtitles are on, then I gotta go to the you gotta deal with all of that on a disc, whereas you don't have to deal with that on the Kaleidescape. One thing is with the Kaleidescape that I do not like. If you think about getting it, think about this. When you rewind a movie, it starts automatically playing subtitles. That is annoying. They are trying to emulate or copy Apple TV, and that is very annoying, because then you have to go to subtitles. You got to turn it off, right? So I do not like that. I wish they would do an update to fix that. So that, and then also the Strato devices do not come with a remote control. So in order to use it, you got to use like your phone, your tablet, or maybe like you have another remote control. that you can hook up to the Kaleidescape. So that's another thing I don't like about it. All of this money, and they don't care about consumers at all. And they can say they care about consumers, they don't. This thing is all for money. So y'all tell me what y'all think in the comment section. I'm being completely real about it. But because I'm such eccentric person when it comes to my theater, and I want the best quality of the movie, I go with the Kaleidescape. But sometimes, like, if it's the same data size as the disc, because you can go on the website and it'll tell you the data size of the Kaleidescape movie. If it's about the same data size, a lot of times I just buy the disc. You know what I'm saying? To have the disc. But if it's more data on a Kaleidescape, oftentimes I'm gonna get it on the Kaleidescape. But then you have to deal with that. Once the movie's done, you can either set it to queue to drop off, and then you just re-download a different movie in its place, or you keep it on your Kaleidescapes, whatever you want to do. Some people think, oh, well, having 10 movies is a lot. You're not going to cycle between 10. Maybe it's like 10 movies that you really like demos of those movies, and you want to like keep those on there, and you want to add to it. Now you got to get a Terra server. You always have access to your movies, but they're not just on the Kaleidescape. You have to take movies off and put them up there, because you don't have 10 at a time. Another thing about a Kaleidescape that could be a negative: if they go out of business, your movies can be done. You don't have ownership of these movies. Even though you're buying them, you don't have ownership of these movies. So if they go out of business, belly up, that's a wrap. So those are negatives. Whereas if you have the disc, you have the disc. You know what I mean? So one cool thing about the Kaleidescape is if you own the disc, a Blu-ray version, a lot of time the 4K UHD comes with a Blu-ray version, you can connect an external Blu-ray reader to the Kaleidescape, and it'll give you a discount on a Kaleidescape version of the movies. And that's what I do, because oftentimes a lot of these movies will be $4.95 to rebuy it. And then I can A/B test them to see which one is really good. You know what I mean? Like, if it's the same or if one is better quality. And that's how I started to see that Kaleidescape oftentimes with a lot of movies had better quality. Or maybe there was some sound that was missing on the disc that's present on the Kaleidescape. It's pushed more forward on a Kaleidescape. But, as a whole, it's my experience. My experience is going to differ than everybody else. But 4K UHD collectors, if you like collecting the disc, you like burning the disc, do that. But as far as having the best quality Kaleidescape, you can't go wrong. You know what I mean? If you're into, taking your theater a little further, but I don't know. Y'all tell me what y'all think down in the comment section below. Let me know what y'all think about this. I'm out, y'all. Got to go to my other channel. Peace.